we just saw this play yesterday, actually. It's called the Screwtape Letters. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
What is it?
It's called the Screwtape Letters. And it's basically a play about the existence of Satan. Another dark subject, but hey, it's appropriate. It's October. Okay, Bruce, welcome again to the Grace Unfiltered podcast, where we talk about body, mind, and spirit through the transforming lens of grace. And I'm the host, Timothy Smith, and we want to welcome you back for our second episode or part to very important topics dealing with psychiatry around the world, but especially in the U.S. So what we're going to be talking about in this particular episode or topic are psych, drugs, and violence. And we're going to be watching another video like we did on the first episode, only this time it's going to be pertinent to this topic. Is there anything you want to say to kind of set this up before we switch over to the video?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the video is going to say it all, and I can, after that's done, you can fire questions.
Okay, very good.
Yeah,
we'll do it that way. So we'll go ahead and roll the video, and we'll talk afterwards. Sounds good.
By the early 1950s, psychiatrists discovered their next miracle cure. A chemical originally designed to kill parasites in pigs, their new discovery hindered brain function in much the same way as shoving an ice pick into the eye socket. It was an old treatment in a new disguise.
With the advent of these new tranquilizing drugs, it seems not too much to say that we're on the verge of an entirely new era in the treatment of mental illness.
Dubbing it a chemical lobotomy, Canadian psychiatrist Heinz Lehmann described Thorazine as a simple, easy-to-take pill with the same effects as psychosurgery, but without the mess.
Thorazine provided psychiatry with the entry into mainstream medicine. It had its magic bullet. If I'm a psychiatrist and I have to spend an hour talking to someone in psychotherapy, there's only so much I can charge for that hour. But if I can come in, give you a pill, and send you back out in 15 minutes or 10 minutes, that's a much more efficient use of my time monetarily.
What psychiatrists didn't tell the public was that Thorazine caused a crippling neurological condition known as tardive dyskinesia.
And that's a neurological syndrome where you have muscle twitches, abnormal jerks, which are uncontrolled, and they either last for a long time or sometimes they're permanent. So that's very clear, very well recognized long-term or permanent brain damage from these medications.
Mr. Blount has virtually no signs of his original illness now. The signs that the movements of his mouth are completely side effects of the drugs that he was on for 20 years. Mr. Blount is quite rational. He understands what's going on. And if you're patient, he can carry on a very rational conversation with you.
Even when you remove the drug, it may still remain. It means you have caused a permanent disabling of the brain. In the late 50s, you get the first signs of it, people starting to worry about it. But it's not until the late 70s that psychiatrists start warning their patients about it. 20 years.
Thorazine's manufacturer, SmithKline French, had good reason to keep a lid on the bad news. In the first year alone, SKF saw a more than 500% return on their original investment. With the public and the press kept in the dark about the severe and disabling side effects, prominent doctors and psychiatrists met in Puerto Rico to lay the groundwork for the expansion of psychiatric drugs far into the future. Psychiatrist Dr. Nathan Klein wrote this in the conference's final report.
The present breadth of drug use may be almost trivial when we compare it to the possible number of chemical substances that will be available for the control of selective aspects of man's life in the year 2000.
Dr. Klein spearheaded a movement flooding new psychiatric wonder drugs onto the global marketplace. Backed by a massive publicity machine, spending hundreds of millions of dollars. Psychiatry was now an industry of drug pushers. By 1970, the American Psychiatric Association was so dependent on drug company money that 30% of its annual budget came from pharmaceutical advertisements in its official journals.
So we had money flowing to trade organizations, we had money flowing to the doctors, and to their journals. Well, we all know that that is going to influence how they think.
The majority of National Institute of Mental Health and National Institute of Health scientists are getting more money from drug companies on the side than their tax-based salary.
With so much money to be made, all psychiatrists needed was a scientific theory to justify it. Their solution? An official report declaring that all mental problems derive from a so-called chemical imbalance in the brain, requiring drugs to correct.
This chemical imbalance is one of the greatest fallacies ever foisted upon patients and the public. There is no chemical test to show an imbalance related to any psychiatric disease, whether it's depression, anxiety, what have you.
The chemical imbalance is for the benefit of the psychiatrist. It has to be there so that psychiatrists can treat it.
But fraudulent chemical imbalance theories could not hide the mounting evidence of common and terrifying side effects, such as akathisia.
Akathisia is like an extreme inner nervous agitation. People describe it as wanting to crawl out of their own skins. And this happens with great frequency, and it is absolutely, totally well understood to be associated with suicide and violence and homicide.
After years of these reported side effects and cases upon cases of violence, self-mutilation, and death, in 1991, health experts, legislators, and the public finally forced the FDA to order an investigation.
I know with absolute certainty that if Charles had any idea of the side effects of Prozac, he would never have taken it.
I had two sons, David Lee, age 8, Billy 16, wife 20 years all gone. I'll tell you why. After being on Prozac for 21 days, my wife shot and killed both of these two boys right here. She turned the gun to herself and shot herself twice.
I took the 9mm automatic, sat down on the bed and put the gun to my head, and I blew a 4-inch hole out the back of my arm instead of my head. Thank God I was a lousy shot. Had someone looked further into Prozac, steps could have been taken to avoid it.
What was supposed to be an unbiased hearing was a panel of psychiatrists, the vast majority with personal financial ties to pharmaceutical companies.
They basically couldn't find an expert, a doctor, a psychiatrist, at a leading medical school who basically in some way or another didn't have a consulting agreement, hadn't taken money from the pharmaceutical companies.
I do not find from the evidence today that there is credible evidence to support a conclusion that antidepressant drugs cause the emergence and or the intensification of suicidality and or other violent behaviors.
500 deaths, 33 murder cases, and over 20,000 adverse side effects. Would you like to tell me why this drug is still on the market?
Is there an alliance, an unholy alliance between the psychiatric community, the pharmaceutical industry, and the FDA? And the answer is yes.
This unholy alliance became all too apparent in 1997, when pharmaceutical companies persuaded the FDA to allow them to advertise directly to the public, with psychiatrists providing medical endorsement. And in just 3 years, sales of psychiatric drugs skyrocketed, almost 2.5 times. When the numbers of violence and suicide victims shot through the roof, public outrage finally forced the FDA to issue warning labels on antidepressants. But by then, 13 years had passed. Billions of dollars had been made, and psychiatrists were marketing their next wonder drugs. Over 120 million of the world's population are taking psychiatric drugs, backed up by fake science and endorsed by regulators who are bought and paid for. Their harmful medications gross more than $84 billion a year. And while psychiatrists were finding a way to diagnose and drug millions of people across the globe, on another front, they were continuing their assault on our most personal freedoms.
Okay. You first, if you have anything before I start questions, anything that you want to respond to about what we just saw?
Well, it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, I fire away with the questions. I mean, we'll see that one from the video, two from some information I'll provide, that so many of these acts of senseless violence, these shootings, when you look at the actual evidence, the shooter is often on or withdrawing from a mind-altering, violence-inducing drug. These kinds of things never happened in years gone by. When I was growing up, going to school, there wasn't any, kids coming in with AK-47s blasting away the course room or the teachers. This is a pharma-induced, outrageous assault on American education and on the public. Anyway, let's fire away.
Yeah, a question just came to my mind based on just what you just said, and that is pharma-induced violence. I mean, that's essentially what you're saying. And when you were young, and even when I was young, I don't remember, well, there weren't school shootings, for example.
Right.
But because that just happened in more recent decades. But are there any statistics on pharma-induced versus some that would be in the category of just psychologically, or they have something that made them other than drug use? Or are we to believe that it's 100% drug use? Do you have statistics on that?
I don't know that it's 100%, Timothy, but it's very, very, very high. Oftentimes, the fact that the shooter was on psych drugs is covered up or is not exposed. I remember after the Columbine shootings, going back, it's a couple of decades. We had called the coroner in Colorado and explained that those kids were likely on psych drugs and had been at the basis of those shootings at Columbine High School. And she was very interested in the data, was going to investigate it. So then in comes the pharmaceutical industry. They send in their team. All of a sudden, her tune changed. No psych drugs on the Columbine shooters. Except the next day, the Air Force came out and said, no, we had refused to accept, I think it was Eric Harris or Dylan, I think it was Eric Harris, one of the two, because he was on psych drugs. So the pharmaceutical industry goes to great lengths to cover this up. And the number of shooters that are on psych drugs is very, very high. I think there have been some where they weren't able to find the evidence of the psych drugs, and in many cases they don't even check, which is something that we are advocating, that they check any of the shootings like this. I mean, Timothy, almost every day now you hear about some act of senseless violence at a church or a bar or a party or whatever. And in terms of statistics, although you'll probably ask me questions that get into this, a stunning number of people in this country are on mind-altering drugs. Drugs that scientific studies show are tied to suicide, are tied to violence. So the vast majority of these shooters are on psych drugs. I can't say 100%. It may be 100%. I'm not making that accusation, but it's a very, very high percentage.
I've heard of people that have had a habit or a disorder, however you want to frame it, for self-harm.
For what? I'm sorry?
Self-harm. Not suicidal, but self-harm.
Oh, self-harm.
Yeah, I mean, cutters. Have you ever heard of that term?
Yeah, yes.
Cutters, okay. So, and they were in prominent places that you would not expect that kind of behavior. So it was unbelievable when I heard this, and they're talking about Prozac in that video. Would that be something that would cause a seemingly normal person, and I put that because what is normal really, right? To harm themselves by cutting their own skin?
It's a good question. There are studies that show exactly that, Timothy. There's a psychiatrist where is he, in Scotland, I think, somewhere over there in the British Isles, that has done a study that shows that exact situation, whereby he tested, placebo, no problem, then antidepressants, and kids cutting themselves up and that kind of thing. So the drugs induce that kind of behavior. There's no question about it.
So is it possible? Is it possible that somebody that does that doesn't have the link between, like, say, Prozac or something they've taken with it? But I find it interesting because from what I understand, the gestational period, there's so many things going on chemically in the development of a human embryo that things can go amiss and go haywire, and they can become either disformed, whether it's physically or possibly mentally. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form downplaying the psychiatric stuff, because that's really what we're talking about. But I'm just wondering what those percentages were, and if we don't have them, we don't have them. But I just find this topic fascinating either way.
Well, I don't have those hard numbers as we speak.
Okay.
And certainly not every act of senseless violence is caused by mind-altering drugs. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the kinds of acts of senseless violence, take the Las Vegas shooting, for instance, or in Texas, or in, I could go through, I used to be able to, I haven't done this in a while, I used to be able to rattle them off, every single one of these shooters that at the time was on psych drugs. It's not, I repeat, it doesn't mean every time that there's an act of senseless violence, it's psych drugs. Unfortunately, the human condition is such that some people are nuts.
Yeah.
And they commit acts of violence on self or family or others. But there is a pattern to these shooters, Timothy. And when you have studied them as closely as we have over the years, they're very, very similar. Many of them have, the prior video talked about akathisia, which is this restlessness. We can't sit down. Many of them have akathisia and then go kill somebody or kill themselves. There's a pattern to it. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. And because this is Grace Unfiltered, And we usually did talk about the body, mind, and spirit. I'm trying to be very disciplined and not bring up the spiritual side of things. But we just saw this play yesterday, actually. It's called the Screwtape Letters. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
What is it?
It's called the Screwtape Letters. And the play is written by a man, I think he died the year I was born. And his name is C.S. Lewis. But they just adapted it for a play. And it's basically a play about the existence of Satan, another dark subject, but hey, it's appropriate. It's October. But there's certainly the spiritual side of things too, not just drugs. There's, how we're, born, so to speak, and predisposed to things, but also the spiritual side. So I at least wanted to mention that third possibility as well. So I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
And that is, what does research show about psychiatric drugs and violence? And I don't want to continue to repeat this, but research is very, very, very clear that these drugs motivate acts of senseless violence and senseless violence and suicide. Senseless violence meaning murder in many cases. If you read, pardon me, I don't bug up my nose here. If you read the stories of these shooters, in many cases, not every case, but in many cases, after these people have gone nuts on these drugs and killed others, they turn the gun on themselves. Mm-hmm. So it's part of the pattern. But I not to repeat, but I will repeat. Studies at Harvard, Yale, Columbia, the State University of New York, all tie these drugs to acts of suicide and/or violence. So there's plenty of scientific data that shows that. In the prior video, there was an FDA hearing that video showed where these mothers women came and talked about the deaths of their family members having been on Prozac. And I was there. I was at that hearing, and the panel is all psychiatrists, right? With, I think there were 15 psychiatrists up there. All of I think 12 of the 15 had ties. That's my recollection. Don't quote me on that, but almost all the psychiatrists up there had ties to the pharmaceutical industry. And this guy read that statement that you saw. Well, we don't. I bet it gets contentious, doesn't it? Doesn't it get contentious? Because it would be hard for you to listen to all this of what they're saying and not speak up.
I sat there listening to this going, what planet am I on? These mothers are, the hearing was called. And so parents flew in from all over the United States to attend these hearings on whether or not psychiatric drugs created violence. And for hours, there was testimony of different incidents of that. And then this guy goes, well, we don't really see any evidence of it. I'm sitting in my chair going, and finally, one guy who was a Navy doctor, after the head of the committee said, we don't see any evidence, went, are you, I forget his exact words, but it was like, are you kidding me? Did you just listen to these women talk?
Yeah, and the emotions in which they talked, I'm sure.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's something, it's like, well, we're not sure what the root causes are when it's glaring everybody in their face. And especially those heartbroken parents, mothers, that are there to testify. And you from a professional standpoint. So another question for you. How widespread is the psych drug usage by children and adults in the U.S.? And I know that sounds like I'm asking another statistical question, but I guess I am.
Well, that one I have some data on, and I've forgotten the exact percentage, but I'd say 18 or 20% of Americans are on psych drugs.
18%? That's
yeah.
That's
I think
adults
that
and children.
I think that number is 78 million. As far as kids are concerned, there's about 6 million youngsters in this country on mind-altering drugs, Timothy.
6 million. Wow.
And about 500,000 of those are infants or children 0 to 5 years old.
Why would infants or toddlers be on drugs? You'd think that would be against the law.
Yeah, well, you'd certainly think so, and it should be without question.
Because they're still developing in many cases, right?
The baby walks around his or her crib, and the psychiatrist diagnoses that as ADHD or depression or what have you, and then the kid's put on psych drugs. It's a travesty. So anyway, those are the numbers.
Well,
about 6 million kids in the country, and about 500,000 of those are 0 to 5. And I think the adult population on psych drugs is 78 million.
And I feel for these parents because I'm sure most parents, not all, but most parents probably think, we need to listen to the professionals.
Yeah.
And they submit their will, maybe even if they're hesitant to do it, just thinking, well, they know more about this than I do. And then they're doing something that's very damaging, as you mentioned, to their own kids, willingly and voluntarily, all in the auspices of science.
Absolutely.
Expert.
I mean,
trust the experts kind of thing.
I couldn't have said it better. I mean, one parent who we worked with over the years was a parent of this just sweet little, I think she was a 9-year-old girl who, I can't remember what it was. There was some upset in her life. And the mother, like you said, was very reticent to put the child on any kind of medication, but it was a big upset for the child. And so she listened to the psych. 9 days later, she came home and the girl hung herself.
Oh, my.
This is the kind of thing that psychiatry does. These people are murderers. They know what they're doing. They hide the studies that show this. They bury the studies. So there have been lawsuits where we've gotten the studies to come to the forefront, but they don't want the public to know this, and they hide it whenever they can. Anyway.
Wow. Well, in the two examples you've given, and this was the first you've given on this particular topic or episode, but the previous one, the first one, you also gave an example, which happened to also be a girl.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
but the vast majority of kids diagnosed with ADHD are boys. But you're right; those two examples were gals, little girls. Yeah.
So that's interesting because you don't generally speaking, maybe not so much the day in which we're living in, but generally speaking, I would think that girls or females in general would be less likely to be A, violent, and B, suicidal.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's just, those two examples just happen to come to mind, but what you said is correct.
But with drugs or drug-induced, I mean, who knows? It probably doesn't matter. Age or gender probably doesn't matter when drugs are involved.
No, that's right. They're
the
molecules that mess up the chemical structure of the brain and drive those people crazy. The so-called serotonin that people have depression because of a lack of serotonin as a chemical imbalance in the brain. More recently, that was proved entirely false, but they ran with it for years. And what happens, Timothy, is that a signal comes down a nerve channel, and it skips the synapse, that jumps a synapse to the next nerve channel. And serotonin is a chemical that comes out and facilitates the transfer of that molecule from this nerve channel to this nerve channel. And in the normal, exercise of things, the serotonin goes back into the brain. But Prozac and drugs like that stop the serotonin from being reuptake into the brain. And so there are these millions of molecules bouncing around in the brain, driving the person crazy.
Wow. So shifting gears a little bit here. So why is it important to call for a full toxicology testing in incidents of mass senseless violence?
Well, I had referred to this earlier. It needs to be shown that these shooters were on psych drugs. In many cases, the shooting occurs, and the talking heads on television. There's no motive. We don't. He didn't broke up with his girlfriend, or he got fired, or whatever. No. You have to do a special test. There's a special
and your
test.
Point, in other words, and your point, they're trying to make it a alibi or an excuse, aren't they? I mean, from a court standpoint, so that they receive some kind of sympathy. That's your point, I think.
Well, the point is, in terms of your question, that a lot of these shootings occur and there is not any investigation of whether or not the shooter was on psych drugs. And that should be the case, and it takes a special test to verify that.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to at least. So that's just basic, I guess, knowledge that everybody would want to know, regardless of whether it's courtroom or any of that. Okay. As we think about wrapping up this episode, is there any stone that's been left unturned that you really want to drive home or make a point of, or give us something else to think about on this topic of psych drugs and violence?
All I would say is, if you're experiencing some kind of mental distress of some kind, you don't want to live life out of a medicine cabinet. Go see a good non-psychiatric healthcare professional. Mm-hmm. There was a psychiatrist here in Los Angeles, Timothy, that was treating people that came to see him with orthomolecular psychiatry. That means vitamins, heavy vitamins, lots of B vitamins. And he was curing a large number of these people. But those he couldn't handle with the vitamins, he did electroshock. So the point being that, the ADHD diagnosis, the parent sends a kid to school with a half a dozen donuts under his belt, or the child isn't learning properly and they act out. It's not a deficiency of Ritalin in the brain. That's not the problem.
Thank you for that last thought. We look forward to having you back again, and we appreciate your time on this topic. Thank you again.
Only one can save. Jesus is his name. Christ alone